Welcome to the Daily Globe. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. In October 2025, Beijing sent shockwaves through the global auto industry, sending markets and boardrooms into a frenzy of speculation and concern. The Chinese government announced a staggering 75% tariff on all US-made electric vehicles, a move that instantly changed the rules of the game for automakers around the world. This bold decision slams the door on American EVs in the world's largest car market, upending strategies for automakers and governments worldwide. For many, it's a wake-up call that the era of easy global access is over. But it's not just about cars, it's about power, ambition, and the race for technological dominance. The electric vehicle sector is now the front line in a much larger battle for economic and political influence. The tariff is a direct response to Washington's own protectionist measures, escalating a trade war that's been brewing for years. Each side is digging in, determined to protect its own interests at any cost. Now, the global auto industry faces a split, China and its allies on one side, a struggling West on the other. The world's supply chains, once tightly woven, are starting to unravel. For Tesla and other US automakers, China was once a key market. Now, it's nearly unreachable. Years of investment and partnership are suddenly at risk, leaving companies scrambling for alternatives. The fallout will hit consumers, disrupt supply chains, and drive up vehicle prices everywhere. Shoppers will feel the pinch, and the ripple effects will be felt in showrooms and factories across continents. The era of global cooperation in green technology is fading, replaced by fierce competition and uncertainty. Joint ventures are dissolving, and trust between nations is eroding. China's bold move is a declaration of its new leadership in the EV space, signaling its intent to dominate the next generation of transportation and clean energy. The world must now navigate a fractured, high-stakes landscape, where every decision could reshape the future of mobility and the balance of global power. This tariff war has deep roots, stretching back through years of economic rivalry and shifting global priorities. Over a decade ago, China made electric vehicles a national priority, pouring billions into the sector and rapidly scaling up production. The government's ambitious policies and heavy subsidies fueled the rise of homegrown EV giants, transforming China into the world's largest EV market almost overnight. As Chinese brands grew stronger and began to eye global markets, Washington grew increasingly concerned about what it saw as unfair competition. In 2024, the US responded with steep tariffs, aiming to protect its own automakers and stem the tide of low-cost Chinese EVs entering the American market. The second Trump administration doubled down, expanding tariffs to cover even more Chinese goods, signaling a hardening stance and escalating the trade conflict to new heights. Beijing, in turn, argued its EV success was due to relentless innovation and technological progress, not just government subsidies. Chinese officials dismissed US actions as desperate protectionism, insisting that their companies had earned their place on the world stage. The result has been a tit-for-tat escalation, with each side imposing new barriers. Businesses and consumers on both sides have felt the pain. Factories have closed, prices have risen, and uncertainty has gripped the industry. The electric vehicle sector has become the main battleground, symbolizing not just the future of manufacturing, but also the race to lead in climate action and green technology. What began as a dispute over subsidies has now evolved into a full-blown technological Cold War, with both nations vying for dominance in innovation, patents, and next-generation mobility. Both countries are now locked in a fierce contest for control over the supply chains and breakthroughs that will define the next era of transportation, from batteries to software and beyond. The stakes have never been higher, as the outcome will shape not only the global auto industry, but the very future of technology and economic power. 2025 marks a turning point for America's EV ambitions. The new administration's One Big Beautiful Bill Act dismantled clean energy policies, axing the $7,500 EV tax credit and freezing funding for charging infrastructure. Consumer demand plummeted, and billions in manufacturing investments evaporated. Factories stalled, jobs vanished, and analysts predict US EV sales could drop by 40% in 5 years. Automakers like Ford are retreating from EVs, shifting back to hybrids and gas-powered cars. The US is no longer leading the electric transition. It's falling behind. This policy reversal leaves a vacuum on the world stage. China is ready to fill it. China's grip on the EV supply chain is unmatched. It controls over 60% of global lithium and 70% of cobalt processing, plus nearly all battery component manufacturing. Even Western gigafactories rely on Chinese-made parts. In 2024, China produced 80% of the world's lithium-ion batteries and 70% of all EVs. Companies like BYD, now the world's top EV seller, benefit from massive scale and rapid innovation cycles. The BYD Seagull sells for under $8,000 in China, while the cheapest US EV costs over $33,000. China's vertical integration delivers unbeatable cost and speed advantages. Its dominance lets it shape the global market to its will. The West simply can't compete on price or scale. At least, not yet. The supply chain is China's ultimate power play. The 2025 tariff escalation is the climax of years of rising tension. The US first imposed a 100% tariff on Chinese EVs in 2024, aiming to shield its industry from low-cost imports. The new administration doubled down, expanding tariffs and ramping up anti-China rhetoric. China's response, a 75% tariff on US EVs, targeting American automakers where it hurts most. Tesla, with factories in both countries, faces a logistical nightmare. The message is clear. Close your market to us, and we'll do the same. Other regions are also taking sides. Europe imposed duties on Chinese EVs, and Brazil is raising tariffs too. The world is splintering into protectionist blocs. The era of free-flowing global trade is ending. Tariffs are now the weapon of choice. The global auto market is being redrawn. For consumers, the trade war means one thing: higher prices and fewer choices. In the US, the end of tax credits and rising costs have pushed the average new car price above $50,000. Meanwhile, Chinese buyers can get a new EV for under $8,000. Tariffs meant to protect US industry are locking out affordable options, shrinking the market for American automakers. Despite political barriers, many Americans would buy a Chinese EV if it saved them money. Dealers expect Chinese brands to find ways around tariffs, possibly by building cars in Mexico. The demand for affordable EVs is relentless. Protectionism is trapping consumers in a high-cost, low-choice market. The risk Western industries stagnate while global rivals surge ahead. The trade war is, in effect, a tax on choice. The trade war has split the auto world in two. In the US, policy reversals and tariffs have triggered factory closures, job losses, and a retreat from EVs. Automakers are pivoting back to hybrids, conceding ground in the race for next-gen technology. The US risks falling further behind as China pushes ahead with relentless innovation and efficiency. In China, overcapacity and price wars are challenges, but they drive companies to become leaner and more competitive. Chinese automakers, facing a saturated home market, are aggressively expanding abroad. Even with tariffs, their cost advantage keeps them competitive in new markets. China's strategy used scale and efficiency to build a global EV empire. The result? American contraction. Chinese expansion. The future of the industry is being decided now. Experts agree. US tariffs may offer short-term relief, but they won't build a competitive EV industry. China's decade-long state-driven strategy stands in stark contrast to America's policy swings. The lack of stable, long-term US industrial policy makes big investments risky. Many in the industry see tariffs as an admission of defeat, not a path to innovation. Protectionism risks locking the US into a high-cost, stagnant market. The global auto market is fragmenting into regional blocks, each with its own standards and supply chains. Chinese brands are set to dominate developing markets, while the West builds trade fortresses. But the lure of affordable Chinese tech will keep testing those walls. Expect more tariff-hopping factories and new trade complexities. The simple globalized market is gone, replaced by a competitive chessboard. China's 75% tariff on US electric vehicles marks the end of an era, one where global trade in cars seemed to promise ever cheaper, ever better options for consumers everywhere. Now we're witnessing the start of a new fractured world order, where economic alliances are shifting and old certainties are dissolving. The global auto industry, once tightly interconnected, is splitting into rival camps. American leadership, long taken for granted, is suddenly under real threat as new players rise. The immediate fallout? Higher prices for consumers, strategic confusion for automakers, and a slowdown in green investment that could stall the fight against climate change. China's disciplined long-term strategy, focused on innovation, scale, and government support, has paid off spectacularly, making it a dominant force in the EV market. Meanwhile, the US is hampered by political volatility, short-term thinking, and a growing wave of protectionism that makes it harder to compete globally. The most advanced affordable electric vehicles are now made by a rival, Chinese companies that have leapfrogged ahead in technology and price. US consumers, meanwhile, are shielded from this competition, but at the cost of fewer choices and higher prices at home. The big question now: can America rebuild its industrial base, invest in new technologies, and reclaim its leadership in the auto industry? Or is it destined to fall further behind, watching as others set the pace for the future of mobility? Real competitiveness requires stable, long-term commitment, investment in infrastructure, research, and a clear vision for the future. That's something the US has often lacked, as shifting political winds disrupt progress and undermine confidence. The world now faces a stark choice: accept fragmented markets and higher costs, or work toward a renewed focus on innovation and global cooperation. Only by coming together can nations hope to drive progress, lower costs, and accelerate the transition to cleaner, smarter transportation. For now, globalization's engine has stalled, leaving industries, workers, and consumers in a state of uncertainty. The world waits to see if this engine can be restarted, or if we're entering a new era of division and competition.